Joey Stuckey has been a musician for I don't know how long. And you're noted as the blind musician with insightful vision. That's what I read from your website.
Yeah.
And you're still working. You're still performing. You're doing things on Facebook and elsewhere when it comes to digital performances. So it's really great to have you on. As you know, this community here is the eSIGHT community or low vision community. So it's going to be great to hear about your story. I mean, you know, how you're handling with your the music industry with your condition,
Yeah.
advantages, disadvantages, all those types of things. I think we're all excited to hear more about you on that front. So do you have like an intro or something that you'd like to start off with?
Yeah. So basically, my sort of synopsis of how I've got to where I am. When I was about 2 years old, I had a brain tumor, and my mother kept thinking that there was something wrong with me, and she had been 6, 7 months sort of worried about me, felt like I wasn't making some of the milestones I should have as her child. She felt like I wasn't looking at her as much as I should, that I wasn't tracking her movements in the room. And she took me to the doctor a couple of times. I'm like, you're an overprotective mother, go home, bake cookies, you know. And then my dad was had taken me up to his office, and he let go of my hand to pick up something, and I took a couple steps forward and fell down a flight of like 30 stairs.
Oh my God.
And so they were, you know, apparently it didn't hurt me. I'll let you decide after you hear me talk for a little while. You can decide for yourselves. But it really, I mean, they were terrified that I had hurt myself while falling down these stairs. And so they took me to the doctor, and they're like, oh, I think he's blind. And then they're like, okay, well, why is he blind? So this is back in the mid 70s. And so come to find out I had a brain tumor. So the brain tumor was really aggressive. And the way I kind of explain it is it was basically crushing wiring from the inside. It was just growing so fast. And so it took out my optic nerves. It took out my pituitary system. So I have no adrenal function. I can't see or smell, which, by the way, is how I tricked my wife into marriage, because I told her that no matter what she did, she'd always look and smell perfect. And she took it. And next weekend we'll have been married. Actually, this coming weekend rather, we'll have been married 17 years.
Oh,
so I did well. Thank you very much.
What's that gift going to look like for the 17 year?
You know, it's with COVID, it's been tricky. So my thought is, hopefully she'll think that me wearing just a ribbon is good. But
yikes. It says I Googled 17th year, and
what is that?
The gift is supposed to be furniture. So furniture is the 17th year. So
I've got it. We just ordered a new mattress. Does that count as furniture? I think
that sounds like an anniversary gift for sure.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, because the one we have is just totally awful.
Okay. Well, a new mattress is always good.
It's time.
Cool. All right.
So, but yeah. So I mean, you know, there were a lot of after the brain tumor was, and it was successfully removed. And I'll tell you that they told my parents that the likelihood of me surviving the brain tumor surgery was very low. And if I did, I probably wouldn't walk or talk. And I can do both those things. And the doctor, told my parents, look, this is going to be an 8 or 9 hour surgery. And if we come out in less than that, you need to be prepared that your son may not have made it. And so they came out about, a little over 3 hours. And of course, my parents were freaked out. And the doctor just said, I don't really know how to explain it, but I feel like a higher power took hold of my hands and I just lifted the tumor out. And, I have a metal shoulder because I have joint issues. Not uncommon with this type of tumor. I have joint issues where my bones I had a vascular necrosis in my hip, which means my bone literally just sort of crumbled into dust. And so I have these two metal joints. And shoulder surgery, hip surgery was not great, but shoulder surgery was a lot less fun than I expected. But they didn't happen till later in life. I think I was 28 maybe when I had my hip surgery, and that was back around 2002-ish. And then I had my shoulder surgery in 2018. But despite all of these challenges, I have done by and large everything I wanted to do, and primarily the reason for that is I don't know when to quit. I mean, I refuse. So I do everything I can. Now, I do a lot of inspirational talks and things like that. And I guess the thing that I always like to explain is that I recognize that I have some limitations that require me to do things differently, but I don't like to define myself in terms of those limitations. And a really good example of that, there was a statesman in my state, hometown, my home state rather, of Georgia. And his name was Max Cleland. And Max Cleland was in Vietnam and fell on a hand grenade and lost his arm, his arm below the elbow on one arm, and then both legs below the knee. And he was a family friend of my dad's forever. And of course I'm blind. And so my dad, as a proud father should, said, "Oh, you should hear what my son's doing," and blah, blah, blah. And of course, my dad had told me for years about who Max Cleland was and what a wonderful person he was and how inspirational he was. Interestingly, after, I guess I was maybe 20 years old, 21, something like that, I finally got a chance to meet Max. And what I do as a blind person that's totally blind is when I walk up to you, I just stick my hand out and say, "Hi, I'm Joey Stuckey. Nice to meet you." And most people, without thinking, just sort of grab your hand and shake. So it's not awkward. I'm not fumbling around trying to find their hand or anything like that. I initiate the contact. So it's just, it's not it's easy to manage. Well, I did that with Max Cleland, but my dad had neglected to mention that he was in a wheelchair.
Oh, man.
Or that he was missing any limbs. So I'm standing above him with my hand stuck out, thinking I'm going to meet someone standing up. And of course, that's not the case. And my dad's like, "Oh boy." And so he grabs my arm and kind of like moves my arm down. But unfortunately for Dad, he chose to put my hand on the arm that was gone below the elbow.
Oh.
And so I'm sitting there like, what is happening? What am I feeling? I didn't know what was going on. And Max was like, "Hey, you got a little vision problem or something?" I was like, "Yes." "Yes, I do." Oh. And the point of that, I mean, I think that story is hilarious, but the point is that my father it never occurred to him to say, "Look at what my blind son is doing." It never occurred to him to say, "Look at what my friend who's disabled, Max Cleland, is doing." He never mentioned any of that to either one of us. He just said, "Here's my wonderful son. Here's my wonderful friend." And so that to me exemplifies the idea of knowing that you may have to do things differently because you do have a physical limitation, but not defining yourselves in terms of that. So, I do talk about being blind because I think that's very important. And I really believe that saying the word blind shouldn't be a dirty word. I'm not offended by that word. It doesn't bother me. I don't like the idea of people having to walk on eggshells to talk to me. And so that's why I talk about being blind up front. It's why I put that on my website and other places, because I want people to know that it's just a different state. It's no different to me than being short or tall, or it's just, we're all different in some way. So to me, mine happens to be that I can't see, but that's kind of how I think about it. And I like to sort of just say, I don't know what your limitation is. We all have something, but regardless of what it is, you can live a life of success and intention and be happy and be happy being your full, true you.
Yeah. I mean, that's very, very well said. I think a lot of people would appreciate that. And that's actually a really common, almost an ongoing theme, about, people accepting, the properties that they've, been handed.
Yeah.
So that's great. I mean, I'm curious about your shoulder.
Yeah.
You're saying 2018. I mean, you make a living on your
It was
on your
not, yeah, it was not a happy moment. and
no. I mean,
and that's the other thing I would say. Like, it's cool to go, I don't like this. I don't think if you were happy all the time, I would worry about you. I would I mean, I'm known as my default position is cheerful and upbeat, but I mean, I'm not happy all the time because that would be nuts. And so I did not like the shoulder surgery. I mean, they did a great job, but it was not fun, and it took me out of work from basically the end of October of 2018 through mid-March of 2020. And of course,
wow.
as I say, I'm sorry, not 2019, pardon me.
Okay, cool. My God.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
It's a lot of rehab there.
There's a lot of rehab. Yeah, but it's it was rough, and I have more issues again without adrenal function and stuff like that. That becomes trickier to manage if you're in the hospital. So it was tough, and I couldn't move my arm for 6 weeks. Couldn't play guitar, for a while, and that was killing me because, to me, that instrument is such a part of me to sing and play the guitar. I mean, it was like I was missing part of my body, not being able to play the guitar. And when one day my wife heard the guitar being played and I wasn't supposed to move my arm at all, it was up on my side like this for 6 weeks, couldn't move it at all.
Oh my God.
And she heard me playing, and I was playing, well, I don't know if anybody will know who this is, but I was playing music by Adrian Belew, and it's a song called "The Three of a Perfect Pair." And it's a real tricky part, but I have a real strong left hand, and I was just hammering the notes with my left hand. I wasn't using my right arm. And she's like, "What are you doing? Oh my God." I was like, "Just my left hand, just my left hand, just my left hand, we're good." But, I couldn't pick the guitar up and hold it properly. So it was just leaning against my leg with the neck kind of sticking up in the air. And so I'm sitting there like this, playing, and so it's just because I had to do something. I was going.
Sounds like the last digital performance you had.
Yeah, it was nuts. I was just like, oh my God.
But it's a testament as well to your persistence, because it seems like you're a diehard kind of guy, right? I mean,
yeah.
You gotta get it perfect. And I same thing happened to my brother. He was fixing his backyard, and his arm went through one of these sliding doors, and he had 70 stitches. And the first thing he thought of was like, oh, my guitar, I just want to be able to continue to play.
Yeah.
And same sort of attitude, like where he's got to get it done, whatever it takes kind of attitude. And he's playing again. But I asked him the other day, I was like, is it the same? And he's like, I feel like this one finger isn't really as strong as the other, or as it used to be. But I mean, he's making do and strengthening himself up. It's almost like a rehab for him.
Well, and interestingly, I mean, fortunately for me, with the right shoulder, well, number one, I don't, I play as well as I ever did, and I'm grateful because I was scared I wouldn't. But I can tell you that they very quickly realized that what they'd had to worry about with me is me working too hard on the rehab, and like, well, if 15 reps is good, I'll do 50, and they realized that was what they had to. So they're like, okay, don't do more than this because you'll hurt yourself. And so I was very, very careful, and I'm a good patient. I've been a professional patient since I was 2. So, I mean, I'm a good patient. I'll do whatever they tell me to do. And so I didn't do that, but my right arm, but they did tell me at one point, I said, I want parity in both arms. I want to be able to reach around and do the same thing I can do with my left arm, my right arm. They're like, that probably isn't going to happen. I'm like, au contraire. I was like, I did not go through all of this not to have parity. And I have total parity with both arms. Now I can't lift real heavy weights past my shoulder with the right arm. You're not supposed to do that. Right. But other than that, I mean, I can get my arm behind my back the exact same amount with the left arm as the right. I can reach above my head. I mean, it basically, I'm just not supposed to do anything real crazy. Like I used to work my arms, like work out with weights, and I do a 20-pound weight, over the back of my head like that. And I can't do that anymore. But I mean, that's not a big deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm pretty good.
I was checking your catalog out on iTunes Music. I'm a subscriber, so
Oh, good.
you know, I was checking it out. One thing that struck me was the Christmas album.
Ah,
Now,
yes.
I know a lot of artists, they come out with a Christmas album. Is that something that I guess, did you actually want to come out with that, or was there one of your people that suggested it?
That's a beautiful question. Yes. So, I don't know anyone that doesn't love holiday music. I mean, it's just Christmas music is so much fun.
There's just not enough of it.
I mean, and the thing is, from a music business standpoint, you know, it has about 6 weeks, 6 week shelf life, but it is gobbled up intensely during those 6 weeks, and everybody wants it on radio, whether it's satellite, terrestrial. It's very popular. And I had my agent emailed me or called me, I forget which, back in July of last year, and said, "Hey, do you need Christmas music?" I was like, "Nope, but I can." And she's like, "Yeah, I've got an opportunity. I know somebody that likes your stuff and would like to potentially use some of your Christmas music in some synchronization film and TV placements." And I said, "Well, I mean, I can make this happen." And so, I mean, because I own a recording studio. That's my day job. That's what I do. That's what makes most of my living. So, you know, I was like, I mean, you know, it's no problem. So within about 10 days from when she asked me, I had a full, I guess, well, I had the whole record done. I had within 2 days or 3 days, I had 3 songs done, and I sent them to her, and everybody, the response I got was so overwhelmingly positive that I said, well, let me do an EP, and I'll do, like, 7 tracks. And so I did 7 tracks and got that done in about 10 days, which is pretty fast, but it was a lot of fun. And I just did songs that I loved, and most of them were public domain, so I didn't have to pay a mechanical royalty. Right. 2 of them were not, which was Let It Snow and Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Those are the 2 that are not public domain. But I did Jingle Bells, that's public domain, which I did a funk interpretation of, kind of a Stevie Wonder, a vibe to it. I did sort of a 90s alternative rock version of Oh Holy Night, and sort of a blues version of Go Tell It on the Mountain. And then I wrote a song called Santa That Plays Guitar. It's really just a very silly song, but people love this song, and I'm very pleased. When it's not every single time you record something that it turns out exactly how you wanted it to in your head.
Right.
And it did. It turned out it was exactly what I wanted. And I love Christmas music, and I've done, Christmas concerts. I've done, different places. I've put on, like, Christmas concerts and stuff, and I love doing those. And so, and I've done full Christmas concerts with a big band. I've done all kind of stuff. And so I've always meant to do a Christmas record. I just never really had, it is like, you're like, it's on your list of stuff to do, but there was just never the right moment. And all of a sudden here was the right moment. And it was weird because I just happened to have, normally I don't have as much time to spend on my own music because I'm so busy working for other people on their music. And I just happened to have the perfect amount of time to get it done between breaks in our tour. And so that's exactly what I did. So I'm glad you brought that up because I really like that record.
Awesome. Well, I'd invite everybody on this chat to go to Apple Music, or I believe Spotify as well. And
yeah, it's everywhere you consume digital music. Yeah,
everywhere. So check it out. Joey Stuckey. You could probably buy your album online, but I'm not going to turn this into like a big plug thing. I also want to know how you got into music, because that's like a big thing. A common theme that we're getting is like, I bought a guitar. It's sitting there. How do you develop that passion to actually get in there and get started?
It's interesting because my dad was a musician. He never made a living at it, but he did it for fun. And so there was always music around the house. And my mom is a preacher's daughter, and used to sing in the choir and do that kind of stuff. So music was always a big part of our home, and was always a source of comfort and joy and celebration. But honestly, I mean, the first part of my life, until I was about 16 years old, I never thought about being a musician or really playing, because I was focused on survival. There were a lot of long hospital stays, a lot of just, trying to go to school and be a kid, and also, and dealing with all the health issues I had. And so when I was around 13 years old, I got really bad sick with pneumonia, and stayed in the hospital. I don't know. I think it was, I want to say 3 weeks. And they finally got me where I could breathe again. But that medicine made me start hemorrhaging. So that was,
Oh, okay.
that was
That's
fun.
it.
And so, when I got home, I had to spend the whole summer in the house, cooped up. And normally we go to the beach every summer, and that's got that kind of thing. But I just really, and so what happened was I discovered old timey radio shows, things like the Lone Ranger and the Shadow, and Johnny Dollar, and all these old radio shows from the 40s, the 50s. There are modern ones as well. In fact, the BBC they still do radio shows, basically fully dramatized stories with music and sound effects. But here in America, we don't do that as much. But there are a couple of modern radio shows out there still. But back before television, that's how people listened to soap operas and detective stories and all that kind of stuff. And for a blind person, it was just this awakening, because the story was told by music, sound effects, and dialogue. And I was like, oh my God, I could do that. I could do that. I could make these sounds. I could record these things and create this world. So when I was well enough, my parents took me to a Radio Shack, and I bought some cheap mixer and a couple microphones, and basically started the scientific method. Like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And I did that. And then I got my first job as the sound technician for the local planetarium when I was 15. And when that happened, there were other kids that worked there, mostly, I was 15, I was the youngest person there, but other people that worked there part-time, from, roughly 16 to 20 something. And a lot of them had garage bands. They had, and they said, hey, we understand you got some recording equipment. And I was like, yeah, I have a little attic studio, and they're like, well, can we come record our bands, demos and stuff? Oh, sure. So that is, and then by the time I heard, I guess I was about 17 at this point, I heard a garage band come in, and they weren't playing covers. They had written original material. And I heard it and I thought, ooh, I could do that. I realized that I had a story to tell. I had something I wanted to share, and that music was the vehicle for that. And so I immediately started, when I was about 17, I started taking guitar lessons. By the time I was 19, I had a studio in a building in downtown Macon, Georgia, where I'm based. I had moved out of the attic room and was making a living, going to college and making a living recording other bands, and had started my own band and started playing and writing songs. And that was it. I mean, I obviously was inspired by, the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and all these wonderful bands, and learned how to play their songs. But the reason I picked up the guitar, the reason it became an obsession, to be honest about it, is because I had something I wanted to say. And while we do play cover material, when we're touring and stuff, it's mixed. It's depending on the venue, but it's at least 50% original music. Sometimes it's 2/3 original and a third cover, but at other times, depending on the crowd and what the bar or the club or whatever, what they need, we'll kind of mix it up. But I got into the business to play my stuff. And that's why it means so much to me, when someone says, "Hey, I really enjoyed that record. Hey, I really enjoyed that song," and you know, it means the world to me. I mean, just it means that, you know, the art that I've made with a lot of you know, blood, sweat, and tears is not only meaningful to me and not only therapy and solace, but it's also helpful to others. So it's a beautiful thing when you get a chance to meet people that like what you do. And that's why I love touring, because as I tell people, it's like, hey, we're here to shake hands and kiss babies, and we'll meet every single person that came out. If you want to meet us after the show, we're here, and we'll spend time with you.
Interesting. So when it comes to you know, developing that skill, I mean, now that you're, you know, a professional musician,
Yeah.
and especially these weird times, I mean, maybe I can open up these questions out to the group here. I mean, when it comes to live music streams, you know, what are people listening to that are on this this event here? Benjamin, are you with us? I know Benjamin Murray had his hand up earlier on, so I thought maybe I'd ask him if he has any questions for Joey. How you doing, Ben?
Good, I'm here. I just want to say it's nice to meet you, and I too am blind, but not totally blind. I am a legally blind musician.
Gotcha.
I've been playing guitar since I was, let me get my brain in gear here. Haven't had I've been playing since I was about 6 years old. One day my dad came to me and he says, you need to play an instrument, because I was homeschooled because of my trials and tribulations that I deal with, because
Sure.
you know, I was a premature baby and so forth. So my parents kept me at home and, you know, coddled me, and, you know, I shouldn't say coddled, but protected me, so to speak. So I was, like I said, homeschooled and, you know, under my mom's wing all the time. So first I said piano, and I said, all right. He says, all right. One day at piano lessons, my teacher fired me. He looked at me, he goes, and here's this, she goes, you can't play the piano because you can't see. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's very true. So I picked up a guitar and been playing ever since.
It's so fascinating you say that, because, you know, the most famous blind musicians are all piano players.
Yeah, Ray Charles, you know.
Yeah, Stevie Wonder, Ronnie Millsap. The only you know, we've got Jeff Healey.
Yeah.
You know, but it's from I went to school for music as well, and so, you know, from a musical theory point of view, piano is the most logical instrument and probably the best way to start. But I never really took to it either. My piano skills are low side of adequate. And what's funny is that people, it's a stereotype, because people go, hey, would you come play piano for us? Like, nope. You don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. My piano skills are good enough that in the studio I fake it really well, but I cheat. I record the right hand part, and then I go back and record the left hand part.
But I'm also friends with a musician out in California who's blind. His name is Felix Bannon. He was featured on the 1980s. Well, I think it was in the 90s. He was on the television show Rescue 911 with William Shatner.
Cool.
Here's this blind musician who saves everybody from this apartment that's on fire.
Wow. And
as soon as I Googled his name immediately, boom, found him on Facebook. And and my dad always tells people that I meet, don't give him your phone number because he'll accost you. And I found this guy's phone number online, and I said, I can't believe I'm talking to the Felix Bannon who saved all these people's lives on Rescue 911. And his first response to me was, and you are whom now? Just a guy on the internet trying to meet famous people, I guess. Well, I have a story, kind of a brief one. Growing up, I listened to blues guitarists quite a bit.
Sure.
So my father and I and my sister, this is when I was about, 10, 12 years old, were invited by a friend of my father's to this blues, this guitar, blues, and piano workshop at the Monroe County Public Library in Monroe, Michigan. And a preacher, Reverend Robert B. Jones, was leading this thing up, and some musicians from the greater Detroit metropolitan area were coming down to meet people and perform, on stage. So I met the pianist Ann Rapson, Mad Cat Ruth, and a really nice guitarist named Johnny Bassett. And I struck up a relationship with these two, with Miss Rapson and Mr. Bassett, to the point where when I would go to shows, I was backstage with these folks.
That's awesome.
Going out on stage. Well,
What?
about 2000, I want to say 2002, maybe. I don't know what year it was. I was going to one of his shows up in Detroit at the Valentine Theater. And here I sat in this high scale restaurant, or, palace-y type place. And he gets up on stage and dedicates a song to me.
Nice.
And,
What song was it?
off the top of my head, I would ask him, but he sadly passed away a few years ago as the Rapson. So,
Sorry about that.
no problem. I take a lot of inspiration from people. I work in local radio. We play, like talked about, Stevie Wonder and those guys. We play that on our radio station and stuff. But we also like to have musicians on. If I, maybe after the meeting or so, I can send you an email or something.
Yeah, sure.
We'd love to have you on our radio show on one of our Musician Fridays via Zoom. We'd love to talk with you. I think,
Absolutely. Well, my email address is hard to remember. It's joey@joeystuckey.com.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben, for the
I will
story.
visit with
That's
anybody. That's right. That's a great story. And isn't it wonderful though to have, when we're talking to Ben, and to hear that these musicians found a kindred spirit and wanted to take time to get to know Ben. That's what it's all about. I mean, music is about community, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much.
awesome.
Is it's all about sharing and growing. And you know what I love too, and I don't know, some people don't feel this way, but I feel like I can learn from anybody. Whether you've been playing guitar 6 months or 30 years, it doesn't matter. I can learn something from you. There's going to be some unique thing you do, and I'll listen and go, wow, I never thought of approaching it that way. And I'm overly educated. I'll admit it. I mean, I've studied a lot and went to music school and all this stuff. And, I know all the theory and everything, and all that stuff's really handy. And because it allows you to more quickly communicate with other musicians and have a common frame of reference. And it allows, especially when you start doing arrangements for horn sections and string sections and all this stuff, it really is handy to know species counterpoint and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, man, it's heart and it's spirit. And, one of my favorite stories to tell is that, I heard the song Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and I'd heard it recorded. It's been recorded by every famous musician out there. And I mean, from Sheryl Crow to Bon Jovi to Jeff Buckley. I mean, it's been recorded by 1 million people, and it's just a beautiful song. And then I've heard the original version by Leonard Cohen, and I was like, what is this terrible? This guy can't sing.
It's horrible.
It's awful.
It's horrible.
And so I was just way turned off. And then somebody was reading, I don't know who was reading to me. Somebody was reading out of Rolling Stone or Spin or something, I don't know. And Bono from U2, who is a wonderful person, but not a humble man. Bono said, Leonard Cohen's the best show I've ever seen. I'm like, wow. If Bono says, here's a guy, who does believe in himself, there's nothing wrong with that. But here's a guy who's like, this is the best show I've ever seen. Maybe I should listen again. And I listened again. The album is called Live in London. It's a 2 CD set. And I realized that while he really wasn't hitting the notes, the gravitas of his personality and the way he interacted with the audience and chatted with them, and the singing wasn't great, but his spirit and presence was amazing. And I was like, wow, and that's what it's really all about. I mean, because there are people that I listen to, you know, we all have songs that move us and songs that don't. And my music's not right for everybody. I don't expect everyone to love what I do. That would be, you know, silly. Obviously, you know, the human in me wants everybody to love it, but it's not going to happen. So, but you know, there are people like Tom Waits that I just, you know, to me, Tom Waits sounds like a Muppet, and I just don't get it. But you know, he's had this amazing career, and with songs like, you know, The Piano Has Been Drinking, and you know, if it speaks to you, it speaks to you. And so that's the great joy about music. It's just like, yes, there's these technical aspects, but at the end of the day, it's unshielded, honest communications between people. And that's what makes it so beautiful. And that's why I love visiting people like Ben and getting to know just people that love music, because whether we like the same music or not, we can appreciate that connection.
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely right. It's almost like you love community, right? And that's what music's all about. I have a question from Tammy. Tammy, are you with us? Hello.
Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Oh, awesome. Hey guys. Hey Joe, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I just started playing guitar 2 months ago.
Excellent.
I'm visually impaired as well. Legally blind, but I do have some sight.
Right.
I just wonder if you had any suggestions as to someone learning to play guitar with a visual impairment, being you've already done it. Like, would you do it differently now? Or what suggestions could you give that when you first started out, that kind of like, oh, I wish someone had told me this, or maybe you would have did it differently now compared to back then? Like, any kind of tips that you would give someone? Because I find that transitioning super difficult.
Yeah, I'll tell you 3 quick points. It will get easier with time, so don't fret. It's okay. It's supposed to be difficult. You know, so learning your personal style and learning, you know, how you communicate is all part of the journey, and learning the physical mechanics of it are all part of the journey. The one thing that really I didn't know when I first started, that I've come to really fervently believe in, and what I teach my students, I believe in kinesthetics. So I'm really into muscle memory and body mechanics. And so rather than, you know, they say that, you know, one of the greatest jazz musicians in the world, Charlie Parker, used to practice, you know, 16, 18 hours a day. Well, good for him, but I'm not going to do that, because I have other things
You're
to
busy.
do, you know? And so, but also the way my body's created, if I did that, all that would happen is I'd get carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it is not logical from a biomechanical viewpoint. It's great that he was able to do that, and no doubt he's one of the greatest musicians of all time, but that's just not reasonable in my opinion. So what I prefer is keep the guitar in easy reach. And I don't do this now because I don't need to, and B, I don't have the time. But when I was really digging in and becoming a professional, one of the things I discovered was I actually got more benefit from several short practice periods a day than one long practice period. So for example, if I'm just going to make this up, say one of the chords that's the hardest to play when you're first starting is F.
Oh.
Haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, so F major is tricky.
I can't get the B minor. That's the tough one for me. So
Gotcha. Well, those, yes, and
same shape.
It's awkward.
Yeah,
it's awkward.
I find C is hard because I have short little fingers, and I'm really having a hard time spreading them to try.
Well, actually, I have a solution for that too. Actually, I'll tell you about that in a second. But basically, what I do is, let's say you're a hard time transitioning between 2 chords. Doesn't matter what they are, but let's just pretend it's C to F.
Okay.
So what you want to do is say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do 5 complete repetitions between C and F, and I'm going to do it with the minimum amount of buzzing and extra finger noise and stuff like that as I can. And I'm just going to play those 2 chords back and forth, C, F, C, F, C, F. And if I mess up and make a horrible mistake, I'm going to start over. And so your goal is to get it 5 repetitions clean within a 5-minute period. What's happening here is you're training your fingers to do the work without you having to engage your mind. So you're building up that muscle memory. And we've got plenty of good scientific data that tells us that, the repetition is what's important, but you need to spread it out over several times a day. So if you have 5 minutes in the morning, but after you have your coffee and before you take your bath, you got 5 minutes you can work on it. Then when you come home from work at 6 o'clock in the evening, you got 5 minutes. Then if you've got 5 minutes before you go to bed at night, it's better to do those in little chunks. Now, this is for the actual just technical mechanics of learning the guitar. If you're learning a new song, that is a different process, and you can play, longer. But these short, really intensely focused practice periods, I guarantee you, if you do this for 2 weeks religiously, 3 times a day, 5 minutes a practice period, you do it for 2 weeks, you will be astounded at what progress you make. And so, but it needs to be, I say 5 minutes, it can be 3 minutes, it can be 7 minutes, but as long as it's focused, because if you sit there for a couple hours, or something like that, you start to lose focus. You're starting to kind of play more than you're kind of, you're more playing or performing, and you're not practicing much, because practicing is supposed to sound terrible. Okay.
It does.
Practicing is because you're working on things you can't do. So when you're sitting there playing around and you're like, oh, it sounds good. Okay. Now you're not practicing, you're performing, right? Because you've got that mastered.
Yeah.
So that's my, and then if with your fingers being a little shorter, one thing you can do, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm pretending my arm's a guitar. So my form on the guitar is my fingers are curved. So if I have my thumb way up here on the neck like this, my fingers are shorter at the front. If I move my thumb down the back of the neck, now my fingers elongate at the front.
Oh.
So
They
if
don't
you
tell you that on YouTube.
yeah. So if you move your thumb down the back of the neck,
Okay.
your fingers will extend further in the front. And really, now I have really big hands, and I do grip my guitar around the neck sometimes with my thumb on top. And there's a reason for that. The reason is if I want to do a bend and really hit it hard with some vibrato, real Jimi Hendrix kind of bend, I lock my thumb at the top of the guitar and shift my hand so it's angled, and then push up. But what's happening is, the reason I do that is if I push up with just my fingers, I don't have as much power. If I rotate my hand like that, now I'm pushing with the tendons in my forearm, and it gives me more power. But normally speaking, you won't see my thumb unless I have a reason for it to be over the top of the neck. But my thumb should be where the ball of your thumb is, right where you bend your first joint there. That should rest about midway on the neck, and you'll if it's higher, you'll find. But if you've got, everybody's hands are different. So if you find that your fingers are a little too short on the front, you can slide your thumb down a little bit, and it will give you more length on the front with your fingers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just, exploring body mechanics, and everybody's different. And the last thing I'll say is, most of my students don't follow through with this, and I'm not going to berate them, but I hold my guitar at an angle. That is the proper body mechanics, so that my shoulder to my elbow on the right side, again, not sure if you can see this, but my shoulder goes to my elbow, goes to my wrist, all at a perfect angle like that. And I repeat the same thing on the other side. And I hold my guitar not straight like this, but up like this at an angle. That's better body mechanics and will be easier on you in the long run. At first, it's really awkward, but long term, it's better.
I just find it tricky because learning from YouTube, sometimes when I'm trying to put my fingers on the proper frets, I don't know if I'm really doing it right. And obviously you can't see.
I mean, if you can take lessons in person with someone, that would obviously be the best situation.
They do have them here in my town, but unfortunately with COVID, it's not offered right now. But
well, yes. Yeah. Right now, you'd have to just kind of take what you can get.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I guess you're doing the good thing there by actually going out there and finding, at least prepping, because I'm sure, Joe, do you think, can you get stuck with bad habits if you start? Okay.
Yes.
So there you go.
Well, so here's the deal. the thing about being human is that habits are easy to form and hard to break. And so I'll have students come in over the weekend and go, oh, I learned an F chord this weekend. I watched this YouTube video. I was like, well, that's actually a D chord, but well done.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, you have to be careful and just get a trusted source. Ideally you would get a musician that has some kind of credibility or reputation, and watch that. Ideally, even better is if you can go to an online school like Berkeley, and learn that way. But if you can't, the biggest thing is you can learn bad habits, and anyone can have a YouTube channel. So it's hard to know sometimes the quality of the education, but with COVID going on, the responsible thing is not to get in somebody else's airspace,
Yeah.
and the real important thing is just keep at it and have fun. It's I'd rather for you to have the guitar and practice it, even if we have to, if somebody had to go back and correct some fingering or something like that. But fingering is key, and you really, it doesn't feel natural. It seems counterintuitive, but you really should be up on the tips of your fingers. A lot of people
actually numb.
Yeah, good.
When it first happened, I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? Did I have like a wrist or something?
It's supposed to be a little uncomfortable at first. It's supposed to be, yeah.
Because I use being visually impaired, I use my fingertips a lot to do.
Absolutely.
So at the end of my fingertips, I'm like, this is weird. But apparently I heard it as normal, so it's good.
It is totally normal. It is totally normal. So yeah, that's okay. And I'll tell you something else that you can do. And again, not sure if you can see, but I'll put my hands together, almost kind of like the pray position, kind of my hands. And before I start playing, I will just very gently, I'll relax my hands totally, and I'll just very gently stretch. I'll just very gently sort of push my hands so that I'm stretching those tendons.
Oh yeah, yes.
That really helps me out. And I mean, you don't want to do it for more than 30 seconds. I mean, that's plenty. But it's just it's not, runners have to stretch before they run. So this is really no different.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When it comes to Leonard Cohen's version of Hallelujah, I mean, there are a lot of different versions of Hallelujah.
Oh my God, thousands.
Do you have a favorite particular version of one? And I'm just referencing this because Ken just mentioned that there's a podcast called Revisionist History by Malcolm Gladwell. And he actually goes into great detail about this particular song. And his favorite version would be the John Cale version. So
I haven't heard that one, but I'll tell you my least favorite version and my favorite version that I've heard. Okay. And again, being that there are so many people have done it, I'm sure there's a bunch I haven't heard. My favorite version is Jeff Buckley.
He mentions that one.
Yeah. It's really good. My least favorite version is Sheryl Crow because she gets the lyrics wrong.
Oh no.
Yeah, she got the lyrics wrong.
Yeah,
and
that one too.
She made it her own, I guess.
And I said, well, I think she just, I think someone said, hey, Cheryl, you should cover this song and we'll release it as some sort of maxi single or something. And she's like, okay. And then it's like, I don't know. It just seems to me, and I might be totally being unfair to Sheryl Crow because I do like her music by and large. I might be being unfair, but my feeling is that she didn't really try very hard on that song. It just doesn't seem like there's much effort put into it. But I could be wrong. And
Ken,
like I said, I like her music by and large. I really do. Favorite Mistake is a killer song.
That is a good one.
And about Eric Clapton. So
does Ken have a version of Hallelujah?
Do I have a favorite? No, I really resonate. That whole Malcolm Gladwell podcast really resonated with me because he talks about the iterative nature of genius. And how that song began as pretty horrible. I mean, yeah, it was pretty bad.
I mean, but vocally it's just terrible.
Oh, it's just incredible. But how over time, how it artists began to build upon one another, and then it's just over time it became such genius and contributions by many people. I think it's just a really cool story.
Well, and the lyrics are brilliant. I mean, the lyrically, Leonard Cohen is just phenomenal. He's like Bob Dylan. I mean, Bob Dylan sounds like somebody's choking him. But what's amazing about Dylan, because to call Dylan a protest singer would be unfair. But because he is more than that. But I think his ability to capture the zeitgeist of the protest era, with Vietnam protests, with civil rights, to capture that moment in a way that was easily disseminatable to the general public in a way that was powerful. That's part of his genius. And again, Bob Dylan's one of those guys who lyrically is just brilliant.
Yeah, he really had he had something to say at a time that people wanted to hear it,
and said it well. You
Yeah.
know, and so if you look like his vocals, I've never been a fan of. Although I will say, he with the Traveling Wilburys stuff that he did, you know, the vocals are a lot better there. That may be Jeff Lynne's producing, I don't know, but you know, it really is some pretty good stuff. But his lyrically, he's just so brilliant, and it just goes to prove one of the things I ask my music technology class. I teach music technology for 2 different universities here in town. And one of the things I ask my class is, what's more important, a good performance or a well-written song? And it's a trick question. There's no right answer.
Okay.
But you can, because you have a well-written song like Hallelujah, and Leonard Cohen's performance is pretty abysmal. You have a poorly written song with a great artist that can really deliver, and you're inspired that way. So, you know, it's incredible. You know, again, that's why music comes down to there's sort of a technical school of music, which is practicing the craft work of music. But at the end of the day, it is really more of a philosophical, you know, way of sharing experiences and ideas. And it's very powerful, and you can do that in so many different ways. You don't have to be the best singer in the world or the best guitar player in the world to share something meaningful. That's the beauty of music.
Interesting. I know, and it sounds like you're speaking as a teacher as well. I mean, how do you
Yeah.
instill that into a student, right? Because I think, you know, as a more mechanical piece, it's kind of like what Tammy's talking about. When you practice through rote memorization with your muscles. But when does that get? Well, I guess once you have that piece developed, how do you develop that second piece of telling stories using your philosophies?
Well, there are 2 things there. The biggest thing is, if you can articulate your point and you can say why you're doing, you know, X, Y, Z, then in my mind it becomes valid. So the way I think about this is, if you say that my style is to play G, C, and D, and that's all I do, and that's my style, but you only know 3 chords, that is not a style. That is a limitation, because style requires intention and, you know, doing something because it communicates your message the best way. So if you know all the chords, but you choose to use G, C, and D because that's what communicates the message, then at that point you have a style. And if you can articulate that, I'm not going to argue with you. And I tell my students, if you can articulate your point of view, and then don't let me or anybody else tell you you're wrong. Do what you do, and we're not going to all sell out 80,000 seat arenas, but you can have a vibrant, profitable, and fulfilling career in music, no matter who you are. You just do what you do. Be you. Because we've already got Britney Spears, we've already got Kelly Clarkson, we've already got, you know, all these, you know, amazing artists. We don't need another one. We need you. We want you. So then how you instill that communication is you encourage your students to share who they are, and most importantly, go out and live. Go out and live, experience the world, and then tell me a story about it.
Right. So watch out for Tammy Martin's next album,
That's
Tammy
right.
Unplugged.
I'm ready.
That would be
I
great.
have to learn to play one song first yet.
Yeah. Well,
Let's-
hey, you know, it starts with one, and then they kind of breed. They're like rabbits.
That's great. What song are you learning right now, Tammy?
Well, nothing yet. I'm still trying to get the transition between D, C, and G, and I hear that a lot of, like 90% of the songs are using those 3 chords.
Oh wow.
So if I can learn that, I can
It is.
learn, like,
It is.
Selma,
She's.
Alabama, or
That is very true. That is very true. Because basically, in the key of G, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord is G, C, and D. And those are very primary building blocks of music. So each chord, you know, and this is uber technical, so I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but each chord has a specific function. And we talk about two different types. There are many different chord types, but when you break them all down, you can, one of the things I like to do is take very complex things and break them into more simple components. So instead of saying major, minor, augmented, diminished, and then talking about compound chords with sharp nines and flat fives and all that kind of stuff.
I don't get all that.
Yeah, I mean, instead of saying all that, what I'd rather
Nobody
talk
does,
about.
Tim.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be an uber nerd like myself. But instead of talking about all that stuff, what I'd rather talk about is consonance and dissonance. So the consonant chords, or the stable chords, are your 1, 4, and 5 chord, your G, C, and D. And they're very stable, and you're able to build melodies on top of those and really play, you know, what you need. The dissonant chords, the minor chords, the diminished chords, stuff like that, those are not chords that you're going to stick on for a long period of time. They are less stable. So they're used as transitional devices. So if you think about, you know, the consonant chords, your G, C, and D chords, they're your main highway. And your dissonant chords are your stoplights, your exit ramps, your other little devices you need to kind of move. You know, you can't get from Macon, Georgia to Detroit taking one road without turning. So at some point you
It
have
sounds
to
like
add,
the name of a song right there.
There's a song right there.
I think there's a song right there.
Yeah, patent pending. I claimed it, patent pending. So, but I mean, that's the deal. So I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, like most of the songs that are like hits feature those three chords, or the equivalent of those three chords in different keys. You know, as a huge bulk of the musical catalog that we consider popular music or pop music.
Is it okay for someone to choose not to learn using, I mean, obviously you did, I assume, just being with if you have, I'm not sure if you have any vision, do you?
Yeah, I don't.
You don't. So choosing to learn guitar without reading the chords and reading the notes.
Yeah, I can't see to do that. I know how to do it, but I can't see to do it. And I was never taught Braille music because no one for 300 or 400 miles taught it. You know, where I was based. So I'll tell you what, I had a teacher, and when I was 17 years old, and he got a box of sand. He had a master's degree. I was really lucky. He was a super smart. And by the way, having a master's degree does not make one smart. There are a lot of people that have masters and doctorates that aren't that bright. And there's a lot of people with doctorate degrees in music that can't play that well. But he happened to be very talented, very smart, has studied and worked really hard on music, and was my first teacher. And so he took a box of sand and drew in it and said, all right, I know you can't see this stuff, but I want you to be able to imagine it so you can talk about it to other people that can see. And he drew the staff. Yeah, he drew the staff out. He drew the treble clef out, the shapes, the quarter notes, the eighth notes, you know, told me what it all meant. So I can actually teach my students to read music, even though I can't read it myself.
That's impressive.
But it's, well, and it was all, I can't take any credit for it. That was totally his. But my gift is I have a really excellent memory. That's my saving grace. That's the thing
Me too.
that powers me. But developing your ear is all you really need. You don't have to be able to read a chart. Now, that being said, at some point, if you choose to do it for a living, you have to weigh investment of time versus return in money. So while I am perfectly capable of learning a symphony and playing with an orchestra, classical music, the amount of time I'd have to invest to be proficient with my sighted counterparts so that not being able to read the page wouldn't be a limitation versus what I'd be paid to do that performance is not worth my time. So I focus on genres like jazz and blues that value creativity, spontaneity, and improvisation, because those things don't require you to know the music. I mean, you have to know the basic form, but you don't have to know what's on the page per se, because you're creating. And so that's kind of where I go, because that's my wheelhouse. So I play to my strengths. But, you know, again, I could I can learn anything that I want to learn. And we play cover material and all that kind of stuff. But I use my mind and my ear. So I know music at a very detailed level. And when you play a song, I can go with a band I've never played with before, play with them the first time, and I'll pick something to listen to. I may listen to the bass guitar. I may listen to the vocal. I may listen to the horn section. I may listen to whatever it is. And I'll listen to that. And by hearing what they're playing, I can predict what's probably going to happen next with about 85% accuracy. So the first time, so the first time through the song, I'll be about 85 to 90% accurate. And the second time through, I'll be 100% accurate. So that's my ear and my mind and my memory giving me those tools. So, but it is, it would be nice to be able to read the chart. It would make things a little easier. But again, I tend to work in groups where I'm the band leader, which means people have to follow me, not the other way around.
The boss. That's
I'm
awesome.
just using it for a campfire thing around the fire in the backyard.
That's
not
great.
Like a career or anything, but just for fun.
Well, you know what? That's the most important thing for it to mean something to you. And I'll tell you something. My dad is deaf, and he cannot sing at all. I mean, it's like a dog in a meat grinder. It's bad. But it makes him. I'm not kidding. I mean, I love my dad. I'd take a bullet for him, but I can't, in all honesty, tell him that he's a good singer. But it makes him so happy. Who cares? It makes him now. When I have to lock the cat up because the cat starts meowing when he starts singing, and it's just this whole, it's this whole thing. But he's actually had people pay him when he was younger and played guitar. He's actually a pretty good guitar player. But when he was younger and played guitar and would sing, people actually literally paid him to stop. So I know it's really, but I mean, it brings him so much joy that, I mean, that's all that really matters.
The way I look at it, if it's not hurting anybody, why not?
No, right.
That is key. Frank, I see that your hand is up over there. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me, and it's great to be part of this. Nice to meet you, Joey. My name is Frank Mano. I'm 57 years old, guitar player.
Excellent.
And I need to sort of dovetail would be better off what Tammy's asking you. As a guitar player, I have about 10 degrees of vision left as far as acuity, and I lose my spot on the neck. If I'm playing a pentatonic Bach scale, I'm okay, but if I have to do a run or a solo or an improvisation that's going to take me from the 3rd fret to the 9th fret, because I can't see the dots or see the neck, it's a train wreck sometimes. Any suggestions? Yeah,
I'll tell you, the best thing you can do is, just get to know your neck, and you say, okay, well, how do I do that? For me, I did 2 different exercises that I felt really helped me know my neck. Number 1 is I do a 2-octave major scale. And I would play, let's say we're going to play it on the 1st fret 6th string. So we're playing an F major double octave scale. So you would play your 1st finger on the 1st fret 6th string. You play your 2nd finger on the 3rd fret 6th string, and your 4th finger on the 5th fret 6th string. Then you'd repeat that pattern on the 5th string. So you're playing frets 1, 3, and 5. Right. So you're doing that. Now you're going to play the 2nd fret on the 4th string with your 1st finger, the 3rd fret with your 2nd finger, and then the 5th fret with your 4th finger. And you're going to repeat that on the 3rd string. And then you're going to move up to the 3rd fret on the 2nd string.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're going to play with the 1st finger on the 3rd fret 2nd, the 3rd finger on the 5th fret 2nd, and then the 4th finger on the 6th fret 2nd. So you've gone through 2 Fs there, and that's a double. And that just helps you cement how those notes lay together. And I start on the 1st fret and play all the way up and all the way back, and then move up a half step. So move up a half step, so you're now starting on the 2nd fret 6th string. And you just keep doing that all the way up the neck and all the way back. And it will really help cement those locations in your mind and get that muscle memory.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I did was using the 6th string open, I would play an E major scale with all on one string. Just to because normally you would do it over a course of 3 strings or whatever or more, but just to cement that shift. So you'd play basically, if you're starting, E is 1, so you play that string open, meaning no finger down. So you play your 6th string open, then 1st finger on the 2nd fret, that's your F sharp, then 3rd finger on the 4th fret, that's your G sharp. Now you're going to slide your 1st finger up to the 5th fret and play that A, put your 3rd finger down again to play the B.
Right.
You're gonna go ahead and play the well, you could do it a couple different ways. I would normally move up from the B to the C sharp again, sliding my 1st finger up again. So now I'm on the C sharp, and then you're gonna play your D with your next finger, and then you'll play your E up on the 12th fret with your 4th finger. And so it just gets you really cemented on where you are.
Okay.
It really, and I think those things are really helpful.
And Joey, do you do online lessons as well?
I do. I do online master classes and lessons and all kind of good stuff. And I didn't have my guitar handy, but yeah,
That's fine. I
Come
mean,
to Canada and give me lessons, please.
I can. I'd love to.
Yes, Eastern Canada. That's
Yeah.
I love Canada. I have been wanting to get to Canada to tour for the past couple of years, and we haven't done it yet. But I love it. I want to come because it sounds awesome.
Nova Scotia's great.
That's what I've heard.
Quite nice.
Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. We're over time now. Visit joeystuckey.com or email joey@joeystuckey.com if you have any requests. I'm going to play out one of his songs as a theme for today, one song at a time. This song is by Joey Stuckey. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. It's been a real pleasure.
Joey.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice.
Thank you, Joey.
Right,
My
thanks,
pleasure,
everyone.
guys.
This is where I'll start. This is where I'll end.
Hey, something.
Heavy is my heart. My soul is wearing thin. Light, dark, near, far. Is this just entropy? Hot, cold, young, old. What do they mean to me? Wake me up. I don't wanna dream anymore. I'm making this a better world, one song at a time, with minor change and major chords. I'm opening your mind, one song at a time. This is just a start, but you're not just a friend. I'm giving you my heart. Together we can win. 'cause you know the words, and joy is what you find. One song at a
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We'll see you next week on our regular coffee chat.